Live. This is Claire LeBeau. I am so excited to be doing a Facebook Live. We had so much fun at the first one. We decided that we're going to go ahead and team up with various coaches from NACE and just keep bringing you some great information from them. So we're going to get a ton of different perspectives from coaches and program directors all across the country. I represent NASEF, the North America Scholastic Esports Federation, and at NASEF we've got high school students in North America and actually around the world who are interested in pursuing esports, whether it's a major, a career path, an interest. So I'm super excited to jump in. Today we were talking about work ethic and mentality, which is important as a student, as a gamer. So let's go ahead and jump right in and introduce ourselves. And I will kick it off. Aaron, how about you go first?
Hi, my name is Aaron Capico. I am the Director of Esports and head coach at Blinn College in Texas.
Awesome. And Teresa?
Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Gaffney. I'm the head coach and coordinator of esports at Messiah University, as well as a mental health counselor at the Engel Center on campus.
Awesome. And Zach?
Hi, my name is Zach Harrington. I'm the assistant director and head coach of esports at Shenandoah University.
Great. Well, good to have you all here. This is going to be an open conversation, so we're going to jump over each other now and then, I'm sure, and chime in when you have something that you want to add or a point that you want to bring up. The first thing I thought is let's just start with a little bit of background. Describe your school and the esports program that you have. Teresa, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. So Messiah University started its esports program in late 2019, and during the illustrious pandemic began their endeavor into esports. So we've been running for a solid 2 years on and off with our interruptions there, but it's been a great start. We now have 5 programs that we've run within the program in terms of teams. So we have Overwatch, League of Legends, Rocket League, Hearthstone, and a new Smash Ultimate ladder system on campus, which is building up to having our Smash varsity team in the spring. So it's been an awesome start. I think we are growing and it's been fun. We're in central Pennsylvania, not too far from Harrisburg, for context.
Awesome. Who's next? Aaron, why don't you tell us a little bit about your program in your school?
Yeah, so I'm here at Blinn College. We are also finishing up our second year now. We're actually in the process now of building out our new arena, our newest arena, which we're really excited about. We currently have teams in Rocket League, Overwatch, League of Legends, Valorant, and Super Smash. And I believe in the spring, we're looking to add an Apex team as well. So we're super excited. We've had some pretty solid success in our first couple of years. I think we've even achieved bigger than as far as some of our results, tournament placements and that kind of thing, more than even we thought this quickly, but we're definitely excited about it and excited for the future for sure.
So both of your programs are 2 years old. I think that just speaks to what is happening in the world of esports, huh? Like crazy growth the last few years for sure. Yeah. Zach, how about you? What's your program like?
Sure. So we're running on our 4th year of operation at Shenandoah University. Currently we have, I feel like old people in the space right now. We currently have 7 varsity teams. We started out with 3, Rocket League, Overwatch, and League of Legends. Since then, we've added Smash, Valorant, Call of Duty, and Madden. And I am super proud of myself for remembering all 7 of those because no matter how many times I say it, I always leave at least one off. But our program, we love the competitive part of esports, which is, why we all got into it. But our program focus has really shifted more into the educational side and our academic offerings. So we offer several certificates, degrees around esports management with a focus of experiential learning and getting people into the industry. So really we offer the competition side, but really what we're trying to do is connect our students with professional opportunities in the future.
That exactly mirrors what NASEF is about in recognizing there are huge career pathway opportunities for kids. And if you can work in a job that you love, that's amazing, right? That's what all of us would hope, is that you get to connect your passions with your day job. And so it's great to see your program recognizing that and building into that as well. I'm curious because you all mentioned varsity teams. Do you have JV teams or clubs also, or how does that work on your campuses?
Sure. So we also, our policy is to kind of try to support as many people who want to participate as possible, especially as early on as it is in collegiate esports. We think inclusivity is a really big important thing. So as long as we have enough people to fill teams, we'll create JV or challenger teams or even club teams based around that interest. But, obviously on the competitive side, the focus is on varsity, and that's where a majority of the resources like coaches go to as well.
Mm-hmm. So do those JV teams stay focused on those same 7 titles, which I know there are 7, I can't remember every one of them,
Sure.
but of those 7, or do they kind of branch out a little bit and maybe try other titles too?
Yeah, with JV, we keep it mirroring varsity, with the idea being that, these players are developing and will eventually step up and take a role in the varsity team. Teams that aren't supported as varsity or JV, if there's enough interest, we'll allow students to run a club team and support them however we can.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We don't currently. Oh, go ahead, Aaron. You're good.
Yeah, so we're kind of in the same model. Pretty much varsity gets a majority of resources and coaching and that kind of thing, and scholarships. And then junior varsity players are those that we're looking to hopefully develop over time and maybe take a role in varsity after a year. And then similar to what Zach said, that if there's enough interest in a particular title, but we don't necessarily offer it at the varsity or university level, we certainly try and support any club teams that may pop up if they're interested.
You said the magic word scholarships in there. So important. That's something that at NASEF for the high schoolers, I think parents are often shocked to realize, oh my gosh, my kid can get a scholarship for this. And it just completely shifts the mentality to, okay, this might be a worthwhile pursuit after all. Yeah. Teresa, how about you? What do you guys do, JV versus varsity?
Well, we currently run as a varsity team. We have a smaller program, it sounds like, compared to Aaron and Zach, but we recognize everyone's on a spectrum of learning. So we have people who are a mix, for instance, you'll have a League of Legends team with gold players playing with, near like grandmaster level skill. And we recognize that actually elevates the gold player for the most part. So I've seen a lot of improvement just by, instead of trying to make it like a gold level team separate from this other varsity team, it's actually helped. So in the guise of like, we don't have the resources to run both junior varsity and varsity, I don't know if it's necessary right now. I think we have a lot of people who are learning from each other and teaching each other through their skills. So right now, it's just varsity, but it may in the future support clubs. We do have some titles which are not encouraged on the varsity level, and I think this is a good conversation to have with others in the industry. Is like, do you have a board of directors that says, I don't want to play FPS games, therefore that limits your choices? So we may offer on a club level some of the games that we just won't support on a varsity level, but that's still a conversation to be had. But our choice will be more along those lines than like maybe a skill level thing right now.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. How many students are in your, whether it's a team structure or JV club? So Zach, now you bring the number 7 into my brain. So I know you've got 7 teams. How many students are represented between the competitive teams and then also the JV and the others who are building up into it?
Sure. So as of right now, let's see. Let me just run some quick numbers in my head. Overall, on the varsity level, I'd say we have probably about 40 students that are competing. As far as the JV level for this season, we're actually we only have 2 JV teams. We have a JV Overwatch and Rocket League team, so that's about 10 players involved at the JV level. With the other games, it just kind of seems like the interest has really or this group of students that are really interested in competitive gaming have kind of found their niche and shifted their focus to what games they want to go into. So a lot of our community is kind of solidified. And now, whereas before we had people who were good at multiple games and kind of team hopping, now it seems like everybody's kind of found their niche and the team that they want to stay with.
That makes sense. Aaron, Teresa, how about you? About how many kids are represented in your teams?
So we have 25 players that are, gold standard varsity, but we have others who are training, like they're in training that will probably be playing with us in the spring. And we also have this Smash Varsity ladder where we want to play in bigger leagues, but we need to suss out who our strongest champions are, so to speak. So we've been running weeklies, and we'll determine by the end of this year who will be joining our two flagship varsity players in tournaments next year. So it'll probably be more by spring.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we're right around that 40 as well between varsity and JV. And then on the club level or just in like our community, because we also have students who may not be players necessarily, but they're a team manager, or they're looking to get into casting, or just want to be supportive of the program, where we have close to 60 to 70 when we start adding in those students as well. So between varsity, junior varsity, club, and then also just community members who are maybe not players, but they help out in some way, around 60 or so.
Okay. All right. That's a good size. And especially you said you're 2 years, right? So you're building. And then one of the things we were talking about earlier is like the majors and the interests of the kids. And I saw that came up in our chat too. So kind of, you don't have to name off every single of the 70 students, but in general, what kind of majors do you see the students in your program pursuing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I know a lot of programs have students that are mainly focused in the STEM area. However, we have a pretty good, diverse group, in all honesty. I mean, we have everything from history majors to computer science. I would say a majority are in the STEM, but we definitely have still a good diverse group.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Teresa, how about you?
I would say we probably are heavily influenced by STEM majors. We just have a pretty strong engineering program at Messiah. So I have a few engineering students. I have some cybersecurity / computer science students, but then I do have across the spectrum, I have sports journalism, sports broadcasting. So that's an interesting one because I'm noticing that that's a really good parlay into esports, and we're hoping to grow within that in the future. We also have students who are studying anything from peace and conflict studies to, whatever. So that has been the range, but mostly STEM. That's just, and I think that's a cultural thing. I think that's just people who are computer sciencey oriented, engineering oriented, have been attracted to video games for a long time. That's been in my 10-year experience in esports. So
that makes sense. And Zach, I'm interested to hear what you have to say, because you said your program's sort of been shifting a bit more towards the career side. So what are you seeing as far as majors and interests in the students there?
Yeah, and I mean, we see people majoring in everything. It's actually kind of strange because you would expect, in an esports program, people who are part of the esports major program would be the ones more involved in the competitive side, but not really any more than any other area on the school. Shenandoah University has a pretty big conservatory, so there are a lot of performing arts students that participate. We have a nursing major who was previously participating in varsity teams, but is now working on kind of physical training and health and wellness program for the program. So we're seeing students just kind of from all over, and everything from, we have former athletes and current athletes that are participating. It's really interesting seeing just the kind of mix of people that come together in the esports arena. And yeah, the numbers just really kind of surprised me because, and what we're actually seeing is generally by like junior year or so, people who are coming in to take the major, who were previously on teams, are starting to shift their focus away. So some of the better players might stop playing because they want to focus more on their professional development, which, as a coach, I'm a little disappointed, but, in general, it's like, yes, awesome. That's great. We must be doing something, right?
Right. They're finding their path, right? And that's good. I think that happens across all sports too. You go in and you're freshman and you're gung ho, and then you hit junior year and the classes get really hard and you've got big projects and things, and you kind of have to make some judgment calls sometimes. So that makes perfect sense.
I want to echo Zach on the fact that we also have a lot of athletes, traditional athletes, not esports athletes, a lot of track students have been on our Rocket League team in particular. And then we do have a few music students as well, which is something I always love using as an allegory when we talk about training. So love that for everybody. The fact that you have diversity is always better.
That's awesome. Well, I see some conversation in the chat about mental health and mental conditioning. So that perfectly reflects what our topic is today around work ethic and mentality. So what kind of advice do you have if you're starting out, let's say you're just starting out the school year and you have a new team, what kind of advice do you have for the students on how to be a good teammate?
So this is something that we've had a lot of experience with, especially this year. This year in particular, for our Overwatch team, we have a few players who are right around like platinum, diamond level, but we have one player in particular who is a former contenders player, which is just below the professional level, and he's worked extremely hard with all of our players to help them improve their not only their mechanical skills but just their understanding of the game. He's brought in outside friends of his to coach them in their specific role, even of high elo players that he's friends with that he brought in to help him out and help out our team as well. So that's something that's been a great experience. And I think one thing that we've really harped on is even if, so for instance, our Valorant roster is all Immortal or Radiant level players, but they all have different perspectives on the game. And that's something that we try to preach to them a lot, is to try to like see the game from different perspectives, because it's going to enhance your game awareness, enhance your knowledge of different setups and different play styles of other teams, because everyone's had a different experience when it comes to how they got here and how they got to that level of play. So listening and being receptive to everyone's feedback and their viewpoint of the game and the way they view the game is always something that we try to preach.
That's when you're talking about developing skills for the real world, right? When you're working in a job, that's those soft skills that are so important, is listening to others and communicating well and building bonds with others. So yeah, super important. Teresa, Zach, how about you? What's your advice for how do you encourage students to be a better teammate?
So, in the context of a newer student coming in, I think a big part of it is getting a feel for what you can manage, because being a good teammate, part of that is the agreement you have with your team and your coach. And, with esports being new and it not quite being ingrained into like high school and middle school, we get a lot of students coming in who love gaming but haven't had the experience of being on a structured competitive team. So that adjustment to having a schedule and set practice times and having to practice intentionally can be difficult, especially when you stack it on top of being a new college student, right? There's a lot and it can be extremely overwhelming. So a lot of it is making sure they understand how to manage their own workload and understand what the limitations are. But also, again, just making sure they understand that, by signing up for the team, this is something they're agreeing to. This is like a job. You can't just show up when you want to. You've got to be there for your teammates. And without, if one part doesn't work, then the whole thing falls apart, right? So you're just making sure that they understand what they're getting into, and that that there is a degree of commitment required for that.
That makes sense. And as far as that structure goes, we're doing our best to grow the structure within the high school space with NASEF and then our partners over at High School Esports League, and giving kids a place where they can compete and develop those skills and learn how to be on a team. I know we have a code of conduct that the kids are expected to live by, and a lot of it is building teamwork and being a good team member. So definitely agree with you there. Teresa, how about you? Do you have anything to add to those comments?
Yeah, to continue in the line of thought that Zach has, it's interesting, especially when you have a new player, that especially esports players that may not have a team background like sports, they aren't used to the repetition, they aren't used to the grind there on a team basis. They may be used to it individually. Like you have a lot of solo queue heroes, you have a lot of people who just individually have grinded ladder, done well, and now we're probably going to take them if they're really good players. But we also have a long process of like, how do you take that and not be that guy or girl who is feeling better than the rest of the team. And I think Aaron gave a great example of his player who was helping others improve as opposed to feeling oppositional, like I'm just better than you. So we've had a conversation where it's like, some people are saying just play the game to the people who are a little lower. And yes, you do have to put the game time in, but once you have them stop saying that, they realize that, oh, it's also a team thing. Like you can't practice communication skills like calling ults in the solo queue. You know, it's hard. You have to do that with your actual team. That's an Overwatch perspective, but it's applies to all games. So we try to make sure that if you're a good teammate, it's different than being a good solo queue guy or girl. So that's one of the things we have to rat out pretty early.
That's definitely important. How about outside of that practice? So you're mentioning, you know, they may be able to grind it out and improve, but outside of practice and game skills, what can kids do to keep improving?
And, you know, I think just kind of continuing along the same vein, it's working on developing those interpersonal and social skills, right? The best teams and the strongest teams and the ones that I've seen improve most are the ones that have a bond outside of just the game. They're the ones going out to lunch together, the ones that hang out, help each other with their homework. Really, and I think this also kind of ties into what I was saying about managing your work balance as well. You kind of need that community support there to be able to manage that. And another thing that I've kind of seen is, you know, people come in who love games and love gaming. That's why they get into esports. But once they're thrown into that regimented practice schedule and there's, you know, matches on the line and there's weight to what happens, it can be difficult and it can become kind of grindy. So, you know, what they need to also do is make sure they have that support system around them outside the game. And also I'd recommend finding other hobbies too, because, you know, like for me, for example, before I started working in esports, I'd go home and play video games to take my mind off of the other stuff that was happening. And, you know, that now it's not really an escape, right? Your mind's always kind of there. So I think students run into the same problem to where what was once their kind of escape and way to unwind becomes almost like their job, right? So finding other hobbies and making sure that you have a healthy life balance outside of esports, I think can help keep you focused and keep you in the right mentality to continue to improve and be a better teammate.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, so kind of piggybacking off of that, we also have like mandatory team bonding days where we will take a practice day, and instead of having a scrimmage or VOD review for that day or whatever it may be, we'll just go. I mean, we've done all kinds of stuff. We've gone to a trampoline park, we've gone bowling, we play laser tag, we play like silly like charade kind of games and that kind of thing. We do just any team bonding stuff we can get down is something we're always going to be supportive of. And I definitely am wary of player burnout and trying to keep players engaged and willing to put those game time hours in. And the best way I've found that we've been able to deal with that kind of is by having those team bonding days, having days off, allowing days to rest and not have to think about the game, have extra time to work on schoolwork, whatever it may be, so that they can rest and relax. And then they come back better the next day just because they had that one day to refresh so that they can go hard and grind out the game a little bit, maybe for 3 or 4 days straight.
Right. I love the idea of a mandatory trampoline park day. I'm all in for that. I think we should implement those in my office.
That would be awesome. But
Right?
I do agree, developing what I call game life balance. It's something I've even developed groups around in terms of mental health and the crossover there with gamers and their individual issues. Game life balance I teach as the way to, you know, just it's like piggybacking off of work-life balance. But most of the time when you're a pro gamer, your work is your game. But it's a different type of work. It can almost feel like hobby, but it's not. It's really just all encompassing. So I see, especially this is important for the high school gamers out there. Like right now, you might be able to call video games your hobby, but what else do you do outside of that if you're looking to do more in college? Because college is a very burnout prone discipline once you start as a student. It's your profession, I should say, when you're a student. So how do you offset the stuff with school and then with video games, which you've all of a sudden made another sort of profession. So be careful to just find ways to wind down that don't involve video games. And it could be anything, honestly. It could be knitting. It could be running around the block 5 times backwards, but just do it, because you're not going to be a good gamer if you can't. It's across the board for anything. It could be a pianist, someone's playing a keyboard over here to my right, or it could be someone who's playing Overwatch. It just, honestly, you need a break. And if you don't give that to yourself, you're gonna probably be a one and done gamer, 1 year and burnt out.
Yeah, for sure. So tilt is something that comes up a lot when you talk about teammates and being on a team. So I guess I'll have all of you address this, but how do you work with students to keep themselves from tilting when they're in game?
I think that's kind of like the magic question, right? That's one of the hardest things to coach and to deal with, because there's not like a procedural flow chart you can follow that says if you follow these steps you're going to avoid tilt, right? And we were talking a little earlier, and Teresa gave some great insight on tilt, and Teresa, you brought up identifying factors outside of the game that might be contributing to that kind of behavior, and I think if you drill down to that and think about it, there's usually some sort of specific reason somebody goes on tilt. There's something that's affecting them, whether it's in game or not, and whether it's their expectations of themselves, frustrations with teammates, or whatever that is. But if you can help students develop an awareness of what that is that causes that, then they can start to resolve that a little bit, right? And I think a lot of that comes down to is expectations as well. Like, using myself as an example, if I'm competing, I'm extremely hard on myself. And when I start to tilt is when I feel like my performance isn't up to my own standard. So it's, being aware of those kind of situations and then trying to work through those and recognize what you can do to avoid putting that pressure on yourself, or, recognizing what the bigger picture is. But, I'm sure Aaron and Teresa have some really awesome stuff to share as well. So I'm gonna stop talking and let them take over here.
No, I think that's solid, Zach. And I think, just to follow up with what you were referring to, it's something in the vein of emotional regulation, which is something mental health workers try to hone in on with clients who have anger issues, for instance, or maybe are depressed or overly anxious and comes from a place where they're not sure where it's coming from. Emotional regulation is just tolerating difficult emotions and being able to find a way and make space for them and work around them and be able to still become a good player. So that's almost like in sports, you might call it tenacity, you might call it willpower, and there's different words. People call it different things, but it's really emotional regulation. So if you can get a hold of that early, you will be able to master the emotions that lead to tilt. So tilt is just really, what is it? It's getting angry, frustrated, right? Use the emotions wheel with your students and try to get them to see what it means to them, because some people might even feel shame when they tilt. I failed what I was supposed to do for my teammates. Like, if you want to take it just on that level, there's, the emotions wheel. You can pull it up on Google, use that with your team, and ask them what they're actually feeling. Define that a little bit more. And, to put it out there, most of our teams are males. And I think with males, they tend to not have as finely tuned words for their emotions. And then that leads to extra frustration when they're trying to talk about it. So they'll just say, I'm mad. But really, is it that? So if you get them, especially if you get our high school students attuned to how to talk about their anger when it relates to gaming early, and then really say, no, it's more about I'm disappointed in myself, then we could talk about what's actually going on. So I think that's what Zach was saying. And to get more, finely tuned, just encourage talking about those emotions with more specific words, and then see where it's coming from.
All right.
Yeah. So those are both great things. Something that we have worked on a lot, especially with our Valorant team this semester. We've had a lot of because they're all such high level players. When someone does something that maybe they don't see as correct, and they maybe they are like, why would you do that? What, like that was a bad play. Why would you make that play? Something along those lines. What I've had to break down and slow them down with is talk to them first and see, because I'm willing to bet that they didn't make that play thinking, oh, this is a bad play and I'm going to make it anyways. They probably had some line of thinking that you might not be seeing, and they're making this play for a specific reason. There's a reason behind they did that they did that. And yeah, maybe it didn't work out. Maybe they were taking a risk, and they wanted to take a risk to possibly win the round and keep us in the map, or whatever it may be. Something that I've also done a lot of is just forcing them to take 5 minutes where nobody talks. Everybody, after a game's over, whether we won or lost, if it was close, if there was frustrations, if people got mad at one another, we have mandatory 5-minute break. Nobody talks. Everybody goes to the bathroom, gets water, whatever it may be, and then we can come back and discuss it once everybody's emotions from the game have winded down a little bit. Everybody's taken that deep breath. Everyone's realized, okay, the game's over. Now, how can we improve on our mistakes from that game? What went right? What went wrong? It's a much more productive environment for us to discuss things rather than discussing in the heat of the moment, or and discussing when we're still emotional about things. And I think it's led to a lot of improvement. Also, for my players in their solo queue games, I talk to them a lot about how they can kind of block out everything else and just focus on, all right, well, my teammate left the game, my teammate's AFK, my teammate did this, they ran it down, whatever happened. Stop focusing on that. Focus on, what can I do? I'm going to play my absolute best for this game. We might lose anyways, but at least I know I did everything I could to not make that outcome happen. And that's been my biggest focus for them. And it's been successful. We've seen a lot of improvement in team play as well as solo queue for them. I think a lot of them, there's obviously still times where they have an outburst, and that comes with maturity. I think when you're dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-olds, it takes time to mature and realize, okay, that does no good for me to yell at my teammate right now. It might make me feel better, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't do any good. So I'm going to start to work and see, okay, how can I improve? How can I help my teammates improve? What can I say that makes it a more constructive criticism rather than just yelling at someone or getting upset at someone?
Yeah, for sure. Teresa, you said something about helping students learn more words, like a bigger vocabulary to talk about, here's what I'm feeling or here's what I'm experiencing. And I think that's a lot of what we're trying to do at NASEF, is help students when they're in that high school space to develop the maturity that Aaron was just talking about, and learn, how do you express what you're feeling in a productive way that's going to help the team, right? And of course, we all have those moments where you're like, oh, that was so frustrating. But then you've got to figure out, how do you move past that and get to the productive place. I'm going to drop a link in the chat, and actually the three of you may also want to visit this. NASEF partners with UC Irvine and with the Connected Learning Lab there, and they've done a significant amount of research for us around esports and learning. And one of the things I looked into was, how do kids, like when they're in the program, how do they feel about their own emotions? And by and large, they all say, when I'm in a program with a coach and with someone who's helping me learn, I improved in the way that I responded in game. And so that's our hope, is that when kids come through our program and then they get to you all, hopefully they've already taken a few of those baby steps towards, what you're trying to do, is you shape them and help them through the maturity that Aaron was talking about. We also have one other resource I just wanted to put in the chat, and that is our Gamers Check-In. This is something that we encourage. We talked a little bit earlier about balance and, what kinds of things are you doing outside? I love the trampoline park idea. Clearly, I've zeroed in on that one. But, what else are you doing, and how can you have a healthy, well-rounded life? And so we have a check-in tool that we've developed that I just put in the chat there in case anybody wants to check that one out also. Teresa, we talked a little bit earlier. I think Zach touched on it, but I just wanted to check and see if there's anything you wanted to add about just the difference between like coaching and counseling, and, when is it tilt? When is there something else going on?
Yeah, I think it is important, and thank you for sharing those resources. And hi to everybody in the chat. It's good to see you all here, active and loving what we're saying, but we love you more. Honestly, you're why we do this. But I think as a coach, a director, anybody working with students, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be esports. When you're working with students, you should be finally attuned to distress. And I think there's a gut when you know there's a difference between a player's tilt and a deeper issue. You can usually tell by the gravity of the words that they use, the level of the emotions, the appropriateness of what they're saying and doing. If there is a player tilting on your team, sit there and think, is this appropriate for the level we are at right now, or is there something more going on, and how long is it going on? And encourage one-on-ones with your students as much as possible. I recently implemented just 15-minute check-ins, like where are you at the program right now, like where's your major at, how's your feelings. I hit with some students that they needed services. They needed services outside of esports that, esports can help you feel like you're learning and connected and great, but there's the other stuff outside of it that influences your ability to even invest in your program. So there's students who were unhappy with their major, had home issues. You become like that social worker in the sense that you have to refer them to services. So please just make sure to listen if there's an issue with your player outside of gaming. So there is a difference between coaching and counseling. Coaching is, motivational. It's life skills development. It's just helping you get on track. But counseling hits those deeper issues, and it helps to just know what your resources are on campus, or even if you're at the high school level, you're a high school director. School psychologists, school counselors, they know what to do when you can't help and you want to, but I think it's okay to encourage talking about, like, hey, how's your mental health? Get a check-in on that sometimes.
For sure. And I think for the students that are watching this too, right? Like, it's good if there's something going on in your life, it's good to figure it out and deal with it so that you can be happier in general.
Yeah, I call it mental flossing. It's okay. It's like going to the doctor. It's like a basic check-in. It's something you got to do.
Right. Definitely. So when you're talking about the transition from high school to college, when kids are in high school, generally their parents are around. When they go to college, a lot of times they're moving away and moving into dorms or that kind of thing. So for the parents who are watching this, what can they do to help their kids develop a work ethic or the mentality that they need to develop to be successful in college?
Yeah, so this is something. So I've had a lot of experience. So my personal background is I played Hearthstone professionally, and I had a great experience with it. I got to play all through college. It helped me pay for my school. It helped me pay for my living when I was in college. It was a great experience, but I had to explain it to not only my whole family, I had to explain it to any and every person I met that, oh, well, what do you do for work? What do you do outside of just going to college? Oh, I play video games, and I have to explain that. And so I was lucky that my family was super supportive, and they supported me and said, "Go chase your dreams, go do what you want to do, and as long as you're still keeping up with your grades and able to take care of yourself, go do it." But my biggest advice to high school parents that have a student who might have an interest in playing esports in college or even professionally or pursuing a professional career in esports in some other capacity is support them like you would support them if they wanted to be in the NFL or if they wanted to play in Major League Baseball or if they wanted to if they wanted to go be a sports broadcaster but they wanted to try and play college football first or something. Support them just like you would support them doing anything else, and just because it's sitting at a computer and instead of going outside and shooting 100 jump shots, it doesn't mean that it has no end goal and that there's no value. And it also doesn't hurt to you don't need to be an expert on the game, but just to familiarize yourself with whatever game your students are interested in, your kids are interested in. Because if you're familiar, then you can connect with them more, understand more. My parents have watched me play on Twitch a couple times, and they didn't really understand. But after the fact, they asked me just, hey, can you sit down and explain some of the basics to us? And once I did that, they were never experts at the game by any means, but they still were able to talk with me about it, ask me more questions. They were able to at least recognize when I was doing well or not doing so well, that kind of thing. Those are my biggest recommendations to parents of high school kids who have that desire to potentially make esports as a career in some capacity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so important too. I know as a parent, I remember when my son started playing lacrosse and we had no idea what lacrosse was. And I was like, why are they running behind the goal? Like everybody knows you can't run behind the goal. Nope, in lacrosse you can. And the referee would come over at halftime and say, does anybody have any questions? And all the parents were like, yes, I have a million questions. And it helped for me to know what he was doing in the game so that I could have a conversation with him after about, like, oh, what happened in this play or something. And, just as a parent to take a genuine interest in what your kids are doing is super important. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that, Zach or Teresa? Advice for parents to help their kids out before they head off to college?
I think Aaron covered a lot of great points there, but parents just want the best for their kids, and just learning about esports, the industry, the games that your kids are playing, and it starts younger too. I think it helps when you're involved and genuinely interested. It helps you understand, like you were saying with lacrosse, what's going on, and then you're less likely to think something's wrong if you're, for instance, your kid is like worried that they lost a bunch of games and they're in a bad mood. Maybe you'll be better able to use that vocabulary to walk them through it, and then that makes them better prepared to deal with it on the varsity or professional level in the future. It just normalizes things.
Right.
Yeah, and yeah, I absolutely agree that parental support is a major key factor in the success, right? Without that, it just compounds onto the pressure that already is trying to achieve, trying to grow up, trying to learn. So having that parental support is absolutely imperative to really help out somebody looking to get into esports. But what I would also say is, as a parent, definitely, like was said, educate yourself as much as you can about the space. And then use that to try to maybe take your kids to an esports event or something, get them involved somehow, because I think it's also important to set the expectation going in as to what it's going to be. You think you're going to come in and play games, it's going to be fun, you're going to have fun the whole time, but it's a lot of work. If you want to be a professional gamer, you're putting in 80 to 100 hours a week to stay on top of your game. If you want to work in the industry, you're putting in 80 to 100 hours a week on no set schedule. There's a lot of work, no matter what level in esports you want to be involved in, whether it's organizing, whether it's business relations, whether it's competing. It is a lot of work. And I think it could really help parents if parents understood that and could help their children understand that when they're looking to step into that industry. It's not going to be a walk in the park. It's going to be hard work, and it's going to require discipline, dedication, and focus. So setting that expectation going in so that if they're transitioning from high school to college, there's not just that extra punch overwhelming them on top of everything else.
Yeah, super important. There's one question in the chat. It's from Gerald Solomon, who's the founder and executive director of NASEF. So he has a vested interest in the answer to this question. Wondering if your programs do any kind of high school or community outreach and support. Do you do internships, like let high schoolers come in and see what's going on in your college program? Anything like that?
Yeah, so we've been working with some of our local high schools, and we've established relationships with a few of them to run some joint community events. We're always open to have the community come in and check out our arena space. We just love sharing what we have and showing everybody what esports actually is.
Yeah.
And we've had some students come and work with us, shadow our director and other things, just to feel get some experience in the space. So we're looking to actively establish relations with colleges. And we've worked with some companies, a company called Stay Plugged In, who runs recruiting combines. They're looking to fill the gap for recruiting between high school and college. But I think it's really important that we work to establish those connections now, because, the high school space is growing, and, esports is just going to get bigger than it is already. So if anything that, we can do to connect to local high schools is absolutely fantastic for us.
Yeah.
we're a smaller program, so we generally have a lot of built-in relationships as a college with our high school. So we get in that way. You know, we do have people who come and do walkthroughs of our space a lot. You know, they want to see if this is a good fit, and that leads to longer conversations. And you know, I think that's great. I love talking to high school students about what they hope and dream for the program, and I meet them when they're juniors or seniors, and then that helps me have an idea, you know, what I can do to make them feel great when they come in eventually, because that's what we want to do. We want to build something that has future oriented, you know, programming. So these are your high schoolers, and if you are a high schooler, you're ahead of the game in the sense that you know what's hot, you know what you want to do. There's stuff that we don't necessarily have as much attunement to, and you do, and I want to hear it. So when I meet them, I'm like, tell me what you would love to see in our program. That's my leading question. And as we develop and we have more resources over the years, I fully expect to do a lot more with our secondary education system, because it's just it's the best place to be. I'm a former high school teacher myself. You know, it's a thrill when you get to work with students who are highly passionate in that age range.
Awesome.
Yeah, something that I've been super happy to do and super interested in, and the more schools I get to talk to, the better, is I've done 2 talks to the entire school district. The school district in Texas will host a online event where I am on a panel and I do a question and answer, and I get to speak to all the high schools in that district at the same time, whether it's coordinators or students who are interested or whoever's interested. And that's been something that I've loved, and I've gotten a lot of great questions and made a lot of good relationships as well. And then I've even done career day type things for my mother, who is a principal on base. And I've gone in and just talked about how I work in esports, and it's always one of the more odd jobs. So I have not only students who ask me questions, but I also end up having other parents who are talking about their career for that day, asking me questions. And I found that just the more you make yourself available and the more you're willing to get out there and talk to people, the more they're willing to listen and try and become interested and find a way to be interested, or they're not personally interested, but their son's interested or their daughter's interested. And that's been a great experience for me personally, and spreading just esports to as many people as possible and finding what would be a good fit potentially in the esports industry for a lot of students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Wow, this has been really helpful. You all have great input, and it's interesting because you have different viewpoints, but I hear a lot of similar themes running through, and I think that's really valuable for students and parents to hear that, you know, the same thing is expected of you wherever you are. So one last question to wrap it up, and I just said there are some similarities, but I imagine there might be a little bit of nuance or difference, and that is, when you're recruiting students into your program, what are you looking for?
Well, I know everybody wants a good player, obviously, but that is not the factor of success that I've seen. I've seen positive, let's call it PMA, positive mental attitude, has equated to the biggest growth in gamers. I had a student who started off never having played Overwatch more than a handful of times, going straight up to like 3,400 SR over, you know, what, like 8 months, because he had a positive attitude about it, and he learned to develop through, you know, the hard stuff, you know, even getting criticized by people. And, you know, we have to work through that with his teammates, you know, to work on their criticism. But he had just a good attitude about it. And that was the differentiating factor. So I don't look at your, I want a good player, but if there's a choice between a platinum player who has a positive mental attitude and a diamond player who's got a bad attitude, I'm going to want the platinum player for sure.
Great. Aaron, how about you?
Yeah, so of course we look for mechanical skill, whatever game it may be. We have kind of minimums almost, where we look at players above a certain skill rating as far as recruiting them to come here. because when we recruit them, we're most likely going to offer them a scholarship. But there's lots of factors that we consider. We consider mechanical skill, but we also consider your communication skills. Have you ever been an in-game leader potentially? That's one of the most difficult positions in any team-based esport, is to be the in-game leader or shot caller. And that is an extremely valuable skill to have. So maybe your mechanical skills a little lower, but your ability to lead the team and be that coach's voice in game is massive. Another thing we look at is what is your tournament experience like? How do you work in a team environment? How do you work in a pressure situation? What is your communication style? Are you a more quiet, reserved player who likes to kind of play back and just play off of others? Are you a more aggressive player who likes to really be the forefront, the leader of the group? And I mean, we'll do even interviews with not only the player themselves, but if they've played on a team previously, whether it's a high school team or a amateur team or anything like that, we'll do an interview with their teammates and their previous coaches to see, okay, how do they work in a team environment? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And that is a lot. And especially when it's two players who are at the exact same skill level, maybe mechanically, if there's a player who had all of his teammates say, oh, he's a great teammate to work with, always willing to put in extra time, and like never tilts, really good at keeping everyone's mental attitude in a positive way, I'm 100% going to pick that guy over the guy whose teammates say, oh, he's okay, he's really good mechanically, his mechanical skills are really there, but he doesn't talk a lot, or he doesn't communicate super well, or he might get tilted and not talk as much when he's tilted, that kind of thing. So we certainly look at a ton of different factors. And then obviously it is college esports, so you have to be able to maintain your grades. You have to be able to go to class on time. A lot of these kids are being made responsible for going to class on time without a mom or dad there for the first time to say, hey, you have to wake up and go to school. No, if you have an 8 a.m., no one's there to wake you up but yourself and your alarm. So you have to be able to maintain and manage that school side of things as well.
Yeah, I think Teresa and Aaron really hit on the really good major points, and I'm just really mostly going to echo what they were saying. The communication thing, absolutely massive. One of the bigger challenges teams face is just staying together interpersonally, right? So being able to communicate effectively, really important for keeping the team together. And also for us, it kind of depends on what role we're looking them to fill. Just in general for the program, somebody that has initiative and that, can just go and start themselves up and get going without a whole lot of push is extremely important. And I think especially now in the esports collegiate setting, we see a lot of colleges that have one, maybe two, if they're lucky, people running the whole program. So students that have initiative and can take on responsibility themselves and help kind of lighten the load, really help the program out overall. So, having that level of focus and maturity definitely helps. And yeah, I think Teresa really nailed it with the positive mental attitude, right? If you have somebody who's getting frustrated in tryouts already, how do you think weeks or months of that kind of stress building up is going to affect them? So, understanding and being able to keep the end goal in mind while also being able to support the people around you is a massive thing. And a lot of that just comes down to those kind of interpersonal and social skills. So coming in, being able to do that, I think is a massive boon. Even more so than, say, having, a higher base level of skill or more experience in the game, because I think those things are in some cases easier taught than these other broader topics that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. This has been so helpful and so informative. And I know we're looking forward to these. NASEF and NACE are collaborating once a month. We're going to be hosting these live streams. And the next one, we've got a great lineup of guests. I just posted it in the chat there, and we'll be getting together on December 9th. So I hope you'll join us here. And Aaron, Teresa, and Zach, I hope to see you in the chat and chiming in and joining us. It's been great to hear from you all, and wish you the best of luck with your programs, and can't wait to see the growth and see what's coming next.
Thanks for having me, Claire.
Thank you so much.
Bye, all.